Hey, it's Saul with another video brought to you by Underwood Juice. Underwood Juice, fuel for your body and your go-kart. In today's video, I'm going to cover and do an analysis of the questline, the Horde questline actually, that's going to lead to the Darkshore Warfront that we're going to see in patch 8.1, Tides of Vengeance. With that said, there are going to be some obvious spoilers, so watch out. If you're new here, please subscribe so you can support the channel and I can keep giving you more of this and all things Warcraft. And if you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button, it helps me out greatly. Now, here we go. Our Horde adventure starts off with us talking to Nathanos over at Zandalar Port. As the High Lord of the Silver Hand, it's my duty to do whatever the heck he says. He tells us that there's trouble brewing in Darkshore and that we're going off on an adventure to find out what's going on. So off we go. We get to a Darkshore that is very different from the Darkshore that we left behind at the beginning of this expansion. The remnants of Teldrassil is nowhere to be seen, which is unfortunate, but the skybox has been replaced with a big black moon. So big in fact it's blocking out the sun, and from our perspective as Horde, we have no idea what's going on. But we do have a big presence here, with goblins farming the land, and over there, hey, there's Nathanos, flanked by two Valkyr. We talk to him and we're given several objectives. To go save some goblin treaders, to beat up some Night Elf commanders for information, and curiously enough, to find Night Elf corpses and raise them into Dark Rangers. And even more surprisingly, you do this very efficiently. In fact, with a push of a button, you can AoE mass raise Dark Rangers instantly. Kind of a far cry from raising those humans over in Deathnell. So after doing some work and beating up some giant Night Elves, one of them seems to make a wisp appear. And I'm not quite sure if this is a wisp that we just beat out of someone, but it wants to follow us. So back we go to Nathanos to report our finding. Even he's confused, like what the heck did you bring with you? But at any rate, we interrogate the wisp through some, I guess, inventive means. And we're treated to a cutscene, which I presume is the event that explains just what's going on here in Darkshore. A little alarmed, Nathanos wants to accelerate what the actual plans are and our reason for being here. He has us go down shore to find Dalaran Summermoon, whose name I now know how to pronounce. Yay! We're going to retrieve her body. We set off a flare and there's Nope, not Nathanos. It's a warden, of all people. Sira Moon Warden comes in to take us out, telling us that there's nowhere else to run, as if we were running. We were not. And we fight. Once she's beaten down, Nathanos and the two Valkyr finally finish their RP walk. We're given a choice, to either take out Sira ourselves, or to let Nathanos do it. She's going to die no matter what. So since she started the fight, well, I decided to finish it. When we strike the final blow, she has a few last words. "Where is she?" she asks. And at this point we don't know who she's alluding to. Nathanos is pretty pleased with himself. Hey, now we got more corpses to bring up. Nice. However, because of impatience or some sort of unwritten rule for how the Valkyr raise the dead, we're going to be raising these two high-profile corpses here on the spot. Obviously, when we start this, reinforcements finally arrive. This time it is a pissed-off Tyrande Whisperwind, with crazy eyes and no explanation. It's a little disappointing that this encounter kicks off with two pissed-off Worgen, followed by two pissed-off Night Elves. But because these specific troops are vengeful or vindictive respectively, this I think is what gets into that whole Alliance gray area of letting vengeance supersede their sense of justice. We kill them anyway, and then Tyrande engages, totally ignoring you and going straight for Nathanos. Once her HP gets a little lower, she's somehow mind-controlled by one of the Valkyr. Now, I'm not quite sure if that's going to be the actual debuff that's used, because there's no indicator of her being mind-controlled during the sequence. Because after only a few moments, she breaks out, the screen turns partially black, and she runs off. And then all of a sudden, we're rooted. And from downtown comes Malfurion Stormrage in not turtle form, as I had hoped, but in bear form. Now the fight's getting a little bit iffy, especially if you're like me and you totally disregard the extra action button that's right there in front of the screen and you just don't notice. Things look a little bit messy here, it might look a little buggy, so you can expect this to look different in live realms, probably. But the fighting continues. Now one of the Valkyr breaks off to join in and fend off Malfurion Stormrage. And sure enough, the Horde are successful with their primary objective. Sira and Dalaran become forsaken. Tyrande tries to reach out to the two ladies during the fighting, but they're not having it. Sira says, "We placed our faith in you." Dalaran continues, saying, "And you abandoned us. Elune abandoned us. We have nothing left. we are forsaken. That seems to both break Tyranda's heart and enrage her. She says, never again, and drops a freaking moon on one of the Valkyr, killing it. Nathanos gets pissed, but he knows that he doesn't have the upper hand. He calls for a retreat, and everyone runs off. Unless you're like me and you still don't notice the extra action button. But don't worry, you'll be fine. That pretty much concludes the questline, and everything else is just a lead up to the Darkshore warfront, including starting to do those resource turn-ins. But you do talk with Syrah for a moment, and she says, we all have our reasons for accepting the Valkyr's gift of undeath. And over there is Dalaran, now leading her Dark Rangers. So I'm going to talk about and analyze a little bit on what happened with these two, because I've seen a lot of critique among forums and Wowhead comments and such, where it seems to be too drastic of a turnaround for these two to suddenly turn heel and become all pro-Horde or pro-Forsaken. The obvious conclusion that some of these critics come to is that this is just more bad writing in part of Blizzard. And while it might not be explicitly spoon-fed to us, I kind of have an explanation as to what's going on. And at the same time, this helps to get to the core of what being a Forsaken means. Let's go back to Syrah's last words. Where is she? It's a final moment of desperation, of despair. In a sense, and without knowing all the circumstances around it, she was let down. Maybe there was a plan in place, maybe Syrah just had faith, and that faith was shattered by no one showing up. And me finishing her off with what, like a chainsaw sword? Kinda brutal. And then think of Dalaran, whose last moments were spent looking at hope literally burn in front of her. Those are really bleak moments to go out in. So the way I see and interpret this with the very nature of the Forsaken and what the Valkyr do, it's almost like upon this kind of resurrection, those kinds of negative feelings, the despair and hopelessness, are hypersensitive, where it essentially becomes a foundation that kind of overrides the original personality. A lot of the original mannerisms might be the same, but the overall outlook in life or unlife is much more bleak than what it used to be. Syrah and Dalaran feel like they were betrayed by their faith, that they have been forsaken, and I'm talking about the adjective, not that they've been turned into the undead race. And while that might not be the case, it just seems to be a symptom or a quality of those who are raised from the dead. So I don't see this as a huge uncharacteristic shift in personality, because in effect, the personality is in fact overwritten by this magic. Like Syrah said though, I would love to see the reasons for hers and Dalaran's reasons for accepting the gift of undeath, if that's even something you can accept or if it's just forced upon you. But now let's focus on Dalaran, because, well, there's a very close parallel between the relationship between her and Sylvanas and how things were with Arthas and Sylvanas when he raised her as a Banshee. We have this almost mirror parallel between these two ladies. They both died defending their home, they're raised from the dead, and now, even though I'm looking ahead a little bit, they're going to participate in the slaughter of their own people. The difference though is that Sylvanas was fully under the sway of Arthas at the time. She was conscious of what she was doing, she didn't want to do it, but her body or her undead body just did it anyway. Dalaran on the surface seems to be a little bit different. She may or may not have her own free will, however she is definitely been influenced by the touch of undeath. In Syrah's case, she feels directly betrayed by Tyrande. In Dalaran's case, it's more like she feels like she's been, well, forsaken or forgotten by the goddess Elune. So I hope we get to find out more from these two about what their new motivations are in Undeath. Or are they just going to be, less meaningful plot devices to forward the story along? So that about wraps up my perspective on this questline, and I can't wait to see the other side of things, the Alliance side, and all the little nuances of what's going on with Tyrande and Malfurion. Once that's available, I'll be doing another walkthrough, so stay tuned for that. Again, if you enjoyed yourself, please like the video, I really appreciate it, and I'll see you folks next time. Until then, stay safe, stay happy, and stay breezy.